Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to work on a relatively rare reel. This is a Penn Spinfisher 716Z. It is the smallest in the black and gold series from Penn. Might be the smallest all around. It's called the Penn Ultralight, and this reel is pretty highly valued by collectors. You just don't find them around. And if you do, know that they are relatively expensive in the used market. Well, Gary sent this in because he's having a problem with the bail. You can see how canted down it is. And Gary tells me that, well, this little stud that should be resting on the plastic block is not resting there. It's resting behind there. And it should actually be up like that and on top. And could I please repair that? And can I service the reel while I'm at it? Well, first thing you want to note on this is that there's quite a space here. This thing should be all the way in, and I think that probably has something to do with the way that the spring is set. We'll probably also guess that the bail is bent because there's quite a gap here on this screw. That shouldn't be. And I imagine if you tighten them all up, what you'll have is a bail that doesn't fire. So I can actually tighten that one by hand, bring that over. That one's actually working there, so we'll have to see what's going on. We can tell from the spool itself, as I remove that spool, it's got the push button in the center, is that the line is wrapped unevenly. It's probably best to see it here. It's gathered all the way to the top, and it's low on the bottom, and that indicates that the spool or the bail is not in alignment and that it's not traveling enough. When it wraps up top, that means that the spool is not going high enough to allow the line to release on the bottom. That's usually solved by some kind of a shim washer in there, but I think the problem in here is that the issue has to do with that bent bail wire and not with the way that the mechanics of that axle shaft and spool shim go. I'm going to show how to service this reel and how to fix the issue with the bail. And then if we I'll probably tie a line on it, put it on the pole, give it a couple of casts, see if we can't work that out and see if it tracks evenly. If it doesn't, we'll show you how to go about adjusting that. A lot of folks have questions about that because there is a cross pin here on the axle shaft and here, and they don't know how to line up or how to raise the spool. Well, there should be a washer under here that allows you to do that. So let's get started with this. And we're going to go right to removing the bail, because what we want to do is work on the spring with the rotor off the assembly. It's just a lot easier to do it that way. To do that, we're going to remove the side plate cover. There's one screw that holds that side cover on. We should be able to remove that, and we're going to look inside the reel. And we'll notice that this is a nice spiral drive reel. It seems to be kept up. It's clean. Looks like there's some fresh oil in there. I can't tell if that's, yeah, it's clean enough. And we'll get to servicing that. One of the things to do at this point is take the handle off while you have the gears engaged. It's a lot easier to do that. Just turn the handle in the clockwise manner, and also note that you have a washer between the handle cap and the sidewall. That's very important to note. All right, we're going to take off the screw that holds the axle and crosswind arm to the main gear. And that's a flat screwdriver for that. And while I'm doing that, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you're trying to understand a little bit more about how it was made, and just leave that in the comment section. I'll try to answer that for you. All right, we took that screw off. I'm also going to take the screw off that holds the arm to the main gear. And if you find any resistance here, stop. You can remove the main gear and the arm independent. You don't have to take this arm off. And I've found on this reel, particularly with the ones that have not been well cared for, that from time to time that screw will freeze in the main gear. So before you do anything, if you find that it's really hard to turn that screw, you might want to just leave it alone and work through that. I'm going to hold the crosswind arm as I twist the axle shaft to get that out of the way. Notice that there is a little metal kind of cap washer there. It's got an extension on it. Put that into the tray so I don't lose that, and I'm going to push the main gear through so that I can remove that. So this reel, again, as I mentioned, is pretty clean. Looks like it's been kept up with servicing. I think that might be a 10 millimeter nut there. Let's go to my deep sockets. You're going to need a deep socket to get it out, and we should be able to remove this one in a traditional counterclockwise manner. So I just felt this nut move. I'm going to just use the socket and use my hands to remove the rest of that. That goes into a parts tray. I've been putting all of my pieces and parts into a parts tray. It's the bottom of the fast food container. And now we can take off the bowl. Just like that. We're going to leave this for the servicing a little bit later, but the first issue we wanted to deal with Gary and his wheel is the bail itself. Alright, I'm going to just stop the video for a moment. I need to find a nut driver to remove this screw. Okay, I've returned. It's a 1/4 inch nut driver, I believe. Now it's hard to see, I've worn this down so much. Alright, we're just going to remove the nut that screws onto the bail. I'm going to take that and put it right back onto the shaft. This got one of those plastic inserts in it. I don't know if it's original to the reel or not, but it's certainly going to hold it down. And we mentioned that this one was a little bit out of shape. I'm just going to remove this now just to check to make sure there's nothing going on behind it. Shouldn't be. It should be up there. There's just a cavity, no spring. All right, like I mentioned, on some of these models you have a dual spring. This one does not have that. All right, so this is where your trip mechanism is. It seems like the screw is, the spring is working right, but this whole assembly should be in. And I'm not sure why that is, or isn't. My guess is we may have seen somebody change this up and put the wrong screw on the wrong side here. We're going to find that out. I want to check to see if these two are the same size screws, and they're not. And I'm going to bet that was the cause of the problem here, that this one belongs on the dead side and this one belongs on the arm side. To check that out, let's go ahead and take the longer one with the thicker case. I'm going to let that spring come out for a moment. This one has the collar on it that would also say that's what you're going to need here. Let's put this one back in and see if this one tightens up all the way. Well, I think that's mystery solved there, because that's turning and it's fully set with the longer throw on that screw. People always ask me when I do these videos, I always say, when you're taking the pieces off, match them up, take a note, which one's longer, which one's shorter. Well, here's an example of that, speaking right in front of us. Okay. Well, we can leave that off or we can leave that on, doesn't matter. This is what I call a dead end. And we're just going to set that off to the side for a moment. We now know where that goes. Let's show you how to set this spring then. So the spring here, it's got a flat side and it's got a 90-degree angle side. The flat side of the spring goes into the cavity where there's a hole below. Just like that. What you want to do on the reels like this is you want to back off the tension as much as you can. So we're way back here. That doesn't belong back there. we want to take the other screw now, hopefully this is the correct one, and just get it started. Trying to keep a couple of different things going. It's not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily easy when I'm trying to do it for the camera and not maybe the way I would normally do this, but we will get this started here. There we go. Now with as much tension off it as you can, roll this around, try to keep the spring in place, and then bring it back so that you can tighten it down once you clear that shoulder. And what that does is it extends this tag now so that it is hitting the bumper as opposed to going to the side of it. Well, you know what? I don't, I see how it's hitting there. Oh, boy, that's a nice mouse trap. But I'm thinking there's no harm, no foul in actually bending that tab in a little bit. I don't know, maybe it's possible that that tab has actually gotten moved out a little bit. Okay, so I just took a moment and I went and I actually took this off again. You didn't need to see that, and rebent the tab a little bit. I'm going to guess it could actually be bent right to a 90 degree angle, but again, that's a nice mouse trap there. Okay, once we've set that or reset it, let's go get your bail. Now this turns, right? So let's not make a rookie mistake that has been done by seasoned pros alike. This can turn when you put it down on your desk or whatever. Make sure when you go to reinstall this that angle clip is up and away from your trip lever. So what you want to do is you want to bring this in, kind of turn it around. It's somewhat hard to handle all of this stuff at the moment, but let's go do that. So you're basically installing this as if it was in the closed position. Get that screw started there, and I guess trying to hold the tension to keep that trip lever down while you're doing it is always a little bit of a struggle there. And then remember we have the collar on there, so make sure the collar threads all the way through. That's how you want to set that. And then we want to come to this side, see how this lines up. Well, I don't think we have a bent bail issue. I think the issue was that we had the screws in the wrong places. Happens. Alright, put that little hold down nut back on and use the nut driver to tighten it up. You can use a small ratchet as well. Okay, we're going to set, and then this is where you get caught in the mouse trap. So let's see if we can't find something to poke it with where I don't slam my fingers. There you go. Actually, we can push it from underneath. This is your trip lever here. It's going to bump up against this little stud here on the body of the reel. So let's go ahead and push that in, and you'll see how it'll flip. Just like that. Hey, tell you what, Gary, that was an interesting one. That's your bail assembly. Well, we haven't even serviced the rest of the reel yet, so let's go ahead and do that. There are two screws here that are holding on your collar that holds your bearing and your pinion assembly. Let's go ahead and take that off. And those of you that are watching, yes, I do not have my protective glove on, and I probably should have put it on. I don't generally wear a glove when I am working on a bail system because, well, you saw it requires a little bit of touch and finesse that I tend to lose when I'm doing that bail work. Well, normally you would say, let's make sure that we know what the up is, but we kind of got that by the slot, right? In there, and we also have tapered holes on the collar here, and you don't need to notice the orientation of this because, well, that's a removable ramp and it sits in that cavity there, so it's going to be a little bit hard to put that on incorrectly, but I've seen it done, so don't worry about it too much. Just take a picture along the way. That's what I recommend for almost all of these projects. Take pictures. That way, if you do get lost along the way, well, you can understand that you have a backup plan, which is to go ahead and look at the pictures and get it right. All right, well, this reel, like I said, I think Gary may have either serviced it or at least kept it in good condition. I'm just going to clean up the parts on this. A beautiful piece of metal here, probably stainless. I've oiled the bearing. I didn't find any issues with the bearing. You can put that bearing on again and spin it. As long as it's quiet and turning freely, you're fine. And we can just go right back and install again. Just like that. We can take the time to go ahead and grease that pinion gear. We're going to use Penn Precision Reel Grease here. And as I feared, I knocked out that key that is the trip lever, or the hump, if you will. So there's two sides to this hump. There's a narrow side and there's a broad side. The narrow side sits to the one piece here. And if you had taken a picture, you could figure that out in terms of how that goes back in. Let's take that collar and put that right on so that we don't lose that piece. Go into our parts tray because we know that's where the other piece is going to be. And let's go ahead and put those two screws back in. Make sure you always use the right screwdriver for the task. Make sure that when you're doing this that the screw blade matches the screw slot. I just had a quick reel come in, a damn quick, and the screws were all butterflied. I could not get the side plate off. That's because somebody was using a screwdriver that was too small, or perhaps even a mechanical screwdriver. They just ripped right through the screws, and well, you're done. Fortunately, the lower half was working. I was able to remove the other side plate and kind of grease it and oil it, do a little bit of superficial clean on it, but I couldn't completely take the reel apart, which is what I like to do, and clean every piece and part and lube and inspect. And the problem is going to be if one of those parts break, because if one of those parts breaks, well, you're going to have a heck of a time getting them all back together again. All right, this is the top end here. Tighten them down. I left them a little proud. Go ahead and put that rotor back on. Find your rotor nut. And this reel is nice in its simplicity, but it's very well engineered. Doesn't have a lot of parts, but the parts they have are all in the right places, and they work seamlessly. I'm going to tighten that by hand first. Then we'll take my ratchet and we'll just make that last quarter turn or whatever might be in there. Just to make sure that that nut is secured. Give it a turn. That's turning beautifully. Go ahead, set your bail, turn it over, make sure that it trips easily enough. And let's go back to the other side now. So we're going to take the main gear, wipe that down, check around here if there's any kind of dirt and debris, get that off the back end. That little notched set there is where your anti-reverse is going to feed. When you work on the reel, make sure that that anti-reverse is in the off position for reinstall. If it's not in the off position for reinstall, you may trap the tip of that anti-reverse dog, and if you trap it, well, the reel isn't going to close up properly, and it's certainly not going to turn. So put it in the off position before the reinstall. All right, I checked the teeth on this. We got the grease in the teeth. We got the grease on the face of it, which is where the arm is going to slide. The last part then is just putting a little bit of grease onto that axle shaft, putting that all the way in, just like that. When it comes through at this point, I generally like to put the handle back on. That way it won't move in and out as you do the rest of the work. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm noticing a noisy handle. I'm going to take care of that by putting a little bit of grease into that oil port there. I said grease, I meant oil. Put a little bit of oil on the back end. Spin it a couple of times and it gets quiet real fast. All right, let's bring this around. I have reset the anti-reverse dog. That's why you're hearing it clicking there. I want to make sure that was working. I'm going to put a light coating of grease onto the shaft. Insert the shaft through. Make sure that the hole is facing out. If there was any grease or dirt or grime like there is on this one, go ahead and mop that off before you reinstall. Go with the softest available option. If you find that the soft option isn't working very well, go a little bit harder in terms of abrasiveness, maybe a kitchen scrubby, or maybe a just trying to find the screw in my parts tray. Avoid anything that's really abrasive, like a sandpaper, for example. Not only is it abrasive, but it's going to leave debris from the sand modules or the like to get knocked down. So please be very careful with what you choose to clean up inside. I like a steel wall. If it does shed, what happens is you can generally pick out those hairs. I'm working this main gear screw again by hand. I want to make sure that the collar clears the other one. And we'll come over here and we're going to load in the axle shaft into that carrier. And just take your time. It needs to be square. If it's not square, you probably got an alignment issue with your main gear. And sometimes it's easier to put it on the one before the other, but I think we got it now. Work that down. Make sure that the hole on your axle shaft aligns with the hole on your crosswind arm. Get the long screw for that. And a lot of these pieces and parts look the same. So just, again, take pictures. That way you won't put the wrong screw in like we saw up top there on the bail. And it's also an opportunity to put the wrong screw in that block here. So just go ahead and do it correctly. Take the pictures for reference points, and you'll be a whole lot better off for it. That screw is tightened, everything is greased, cleaned, reassembled. Give it a ride. Look at that. What a beauty. What a beauty. All right, we just want to put the case back on this reel then. So this has been one of those unusual my reel doesn't work issues. Solved again. All right. You can see why these are desirable. They're fantastic freshwater reels. So over-engineered. I think to some of the ones that I grew up fishing with back in the 50s, it was just a big gear, a little gear made of pot metal. And, well, you know what? It caught a lot of fish on them. But thinking of that by consequence, wow. That is such a beautiful reel. I'm envious. All right, let's just take a look at what's under this now. Again, I'm thinking I will probably put this on a pole, throw it until most of that braid is off, see if we have an issue here with the washer underneath or not. This is a metal washer. There should be a Teflon washer underneath this. I'm going to push that whole stud out and down. Here is your Teflon washer that I was talking about. That's the shim washer. And that shim washer should enable your spool to line freely. This spool wasn't raising enough. I think that's because of the canted bail, but if it's not, you would add another one of these Teflon washers below. Above you have a Teflon washer. I'm going to put the shaft back in. Teflon washers just need to be cleaned. They don't get oiled or greased or anything like that. They're self-lubricating. And quite honestly, this reel just does not need a lot of drag. What it does need is clean drags. So make sure you clean it up, clean the washer off, and then clean the faceplate off. Make sure that this tension washer is there. And don't put any oil on it. It's only going to cause it to slip. All right, and we should be able to align that and get that over the top here. So having a little bit of an issue identifying the flat side. There we go. I often get this question, is that up or is this up? The up side is where the tags are down, facing down. That's good. Put that back on. Again, I'll probably take this, put it on a rod. Give it a little long cast in my yard or out on the street. See if we can't get that line to spool more evenly. Well, you can see right away the difference in how that bail is aligned. Instead of this bail arm going this way, it's parallel to the spool, and that should result in an more even line carry. Let's just bring it all the way up to the top of the loop. And as I'm looking at the top of the loop, if I come down through this arm now, I'm coming pretty much to the base of the spool. I don't know how easy that is for you to see, but that will enable that line on the bottom to wrap that way. What a beautiful reel. Gary, thanks for sending it in. This is how you service the 716Z Penn Ultralight Spin Fisher, and I hope you've enjoyed watching that. To all of our friends, first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. To all, Happy New Year. I'm wishing everybody the best. Great fishing, great friends, and great stories to tell of the fish you caught. To all, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.